If you're responsible for how the electrical power flow interacts with the ceramics, interacts with the polymers, which interacts with the electronics, with the computer science, and on and on and on, you've moved from managing each of those disciplines individually to having to manage the interaction. So within Ford and Toyota and Boeing and GE and Pratt & Whitney and any other organization which has proven very, very good at managing the complexity of their products, the complexity of their processes, they have expertise within functions, expertise within disciplines, but they have to create someone whose job, very specific job, is managing the integration across those pieces. And so you'll hear terms in manufacturing of a chief engineer. You wonder what that is. Well, the chief engineer and the deputy chief engineer and the assistant deputy chief engineer and the aide to the deputy assistant chief engineer, their job is to worry about the integration, how the pieces come together. There's a second piece here. 1964, if you had to design a Ford Mustang, with reasonable training in mechanical engineering, you could come up with a design for the engine. And because the design of the engine led to the design of the transmission, you could come up with a reasonable design for the transmission. And because that led to the design of the drive shaft, you could come up with a reasonable design for the drive shaft. Again, waterfalls or dominoes, but this cascade of decisions. In 2010, it doesn't work that way because so many things are connected in so many convoluted, intertwined, complex, often unknown, unpredictable ways. You simply can't make a decision and think that that one decision will cascade down, waterfall down to all the other decisions. You have to make a set of decisions knowing that whatever decision you've made is wrong. It's absolutely wrong. Now let me just pause there because, here we're in Israel with an ample amount of high tech, ample amount of higher education. And you think about how people advance. They go to school, they do very well in school because they get the right answer. And because they get the right answer, they get a gold star, they get an A+, they get 100%, whatever it is, and they get to go to another school. And in that school, they try real hard to get the right answer. And when they get the right answer, they get a sticker, a gold star, another A+, to go to another school. And this just keeps going and going and going. And as we learn more, we add the number of schools and the number of grades. And every point along the way you get to go from one school to the next, to the next, to the next, is by getting the right answer. In 2010, the great companies have realized that no matter how smart you are, how much education you have, no matter how hard you work, your first answer will be wrong. It has to be wrong. And the reason it has to be wrong is because you're trying to design things with all these different pieces, many of which you overlook, connected in ways you don't understand. So whatever you design first is going to be wrong. It's going to be broken. But the thing is, you need something which delights customers. I mean, ideally, it's perfect, but at least adequate. So if your first answer is broken, it's wrong. It's not an A+. It's not even an A, a B, or a C. It's a D. There's no gold star. You're not even getting the sticker from the teacher. But you have to get to great. The only way to do that is to discover your way to greatness. The great companies, really great, twice as productive, twice as fast, 10 times as safe, is not because they're smarter in terms of getting the right answer on the first try. Is that they can learn much, much faster, with greater reliability across a much greater range of people, much broader base than any of their competitors. Again, it's not the A+ they got initially. It's their ability to discover their way to perfection. Now, I've talked about the problem Ford has with the new version of the Mustang compared to the old version of the Mustang. I just want to spend a little bit of time to say this is not a problem just for Ford or just for the auto industry. There probably couldn't be an industry more different from autos, the manufacturing of a physical product which is kinetic, than the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry has gone through exactly the same transformation as the auto industry. In 1964, if you had an ailment and went to a doctor, That was it. And in fact, we talk that our language is still framed around, I don't feel well, I'm going to see the doctor. And that comes out of 1964, because when you weren't feeling well, you went to see a single person. And there's a reason you went to see a single person in 1964. It wasn't because they were smart in 1964 and they're not smart now. It's in 1964 there wasn't that much to know about medical science. A lot of the things we know today hadn't been invented, hadn't even been thought about. So if you didn't feel well, you went to see the doctor, and there was a pretty darn good chance in 1964 the doctor knew everything available in medical science. Everything. Now, it turned out that everything wasn't very much, so if you went to the medical doctor in 1964, there wasn't much they could do for you. So we have this image, and again, I don't know the Israeli analogy on this, but in the United States, we used to have a TV show called Marcus Welby, MD. And Marcus Welby was a very nice doctor. He wore a nice jacket, he wore a nice tie. When you walked in, he knew your name. He asked you about how your family was, how your spouse was, how the job was. The reason he asked all these questions is there actually wasn't much you could ask about your illness. So he had to fill the time. It was, you can't have someone come in and bill for a minute. 15 minutes, 30 minutes, you can bill. So he's got to fill the time. So he says, how are you feeling today? And he's not asking like, oh, my knee hurts. Just like, oh, I'm feeling okay, things are going all right. And he has these conversations with you. Well, we joke in the United States that healthcare has lost this personal touch. Now, there's a whole lot of reasons it's lost the personal touch. A big part of the reason is when you go to the doctor and they ask, how are you feeling? They actually can have a conversation about how you're feeling. And it's not just like talking to your friend over coffee. What's happened in healthcare, of course, is that whatever the ailment happens to be, you don't go see the doctor. You go see the healthcare system. And when you go into the healthcare system, you see doctors and nurses and nurse practitioners and physician assistants and medical assistants and secretaries and receptionists and technicians, all of whom somehow have a little bit to contribute to the whole. So you might go in and you might have a physical examination, X-ray, CT scan, MRI scan, blood work, genetic testing. Your treatment might involve surgery, it might involve radiation, it might involve chemicals, it might involve pharmacology, it might involve rehabilitative therapy of several types. It could be physical, it could be respiratory. All these pieces coming together. Now here's the good news. The ability to diagnose disease now is much better than it ever was. The ability to treat disease now is much better than it ever was. The problem is, in healthcare, you've got exactly the same problem as Ford has, which is in order to diagnose successfully, in order to treat successfully, you've got all these different disciplines which are in the same room together, which have to be coordinated and integrated in very non-linear, non-cascade, non-waterfall, non-domino ways, because of all the different interactions and all the interdependencies. Healthcare now looks like this, until the next patient walks in the door, and healthcare now looks like this, until yet the next patient walks in the door. That's the problem in healthcare. Now again, like in auto manufacturing, like in the manufacturing of microchips, greatness is possible. There are healthcare organizations which are impeccably safe, incredibly safe, and others which are very dangerous to their patients. There are some which are incredibly safe for their staff, others incredibly dangerous for their staff, others which have 2- and 3- and 4-fold the capacity to treat patients compared to everybody else. Not that the individuals are any smarter, not that it hurts. I mean, if you got smart people, don't get rid of smart people. It doesn't hurt, but it's not sufficient. It's not sufficient. And I think this is a phrase I'm going to steal from Gotti. I'm telling you I'm stealing it, so it's like, here, give me your wallet, right? But Gotti's phrase is that a bad system will defeat very good people. And in healthcare today, it doesn't matter how good the individual people are, unless you have a good system, the bad system will defeat the good people. And how do you get a good system in healthcare? Exactly like in the auto industry. You have to have people responsible for worrying about how the pieces come together. That's one, the structural response. And then the second piece is, when you're trying to develop diagnostic plans, when you're trying to develop treatment plans that look like the ones on the far side of the screen, you're going to get it wrong on the first try. Now again, remember I said the problem for any organization in terms of achieving greatness today is admitting that. Now if you have to pick an industry where this is the biggest problem, it's healthcare. Because how do you become a doctor? Because where everyone else got an A+ in elementary school, you got A++. When you got to high school, everyone who got an A+, you got A++ to go to a great college. And in college, you got A++. And then you went to medical school and you got A ++ to get to a great residency program. Doctors have always gotten the answer right. Nurses have always gotten the answer right. The same is with pharmacists and therapists and everybody else. And you have an industry populated by people who are used to getting the right answer, who strive to get the right answer, who get rewarded for getting the right answer, who now have to admit that the first answer they give is wrong. And not only is it wrong, they don't know how it's wrong. So that's the big challenge. Ford for product design, product manufacturing, healthcare, and the knowledge-based services industry. The basic problem is the complexity of the systems in which people are embedded, the basic complexity of the systems for which they're responsible, and the impossibility of getting those systems right on the first try. That's the challenge. Now, with that challenge established, I want to talk about how some organizations have successfully dealt with the challenge of complexity and creating the ability to discover their way to perfection. But before I move on to the what do you do, any questions about why you have to worry about this discovery? All right. Let me talk about Toyota as an example of an organization people have looked to understand how you achieve greatness. Now, the reason people have looked at Toyota is really quite simple, is that in 1985, 1983, that time frame, the American automakers looked at Toyota and said, son of a gun, these people, and this is how they said it, they are stealing market share. Stealing market share. Now, the thing about that phrase is when you say someone is stealing market share, it sounds like they're taking something they don't deserve. It's like, if I steal your wallet, it's not my wallet, it's your wallet. I'm not allowed to have your wallet, but I'm taking it anyway. Stealing market share. What happened when people tried to understand how Toyota was so able to steal market share, there was a wave of study over to Japan, and what they discovered is Toyota wasn't stealing market share, they were earning market share. And the way they were earning market share is that when people started looking inside Toyota factories and the suppliers of Toyota, they found that on any given day, half the people in half the space with half the equipment, half the inventory on hand, were making twice the product. It was half in, twice out. Now this half in, twice out is actually quite remarkable. See, it'd be one thing if we said, well, Toyota was always great. And so it's not surprising that they were once great, they're great today, they're going to be great tomorrow. But it turns out Toyota was actually once very bad.